G'day, I'm Dan and I'm from Cultivate 3D, and today we're going to take you through the beast's calibration. Now essentially this process will allow you to level up your print bed and also align your x-axes to your print bed to give you perfectly flat first layers. Okay, so we're going to need some tools for this part of the process. The first thing that you're going to need is a spirit level. You're going to need a hex driver that will suit M5 bolts. You also need a pair of long nose pliers and a hex driver that suits an M3 bolt. So I'm just going to draw your attention to these two white things that we have at the front of the printer in each of the left and right bed holders. Now it's essentially double-sided tape. It's there to hold the bed in place without actually applying any torsion or force to the bed. Now we found that if we clamp the bed in any way, shape or form, it will actually deform the bed very slightly, which can be disastrous for your first layer. So just a tip, whack a bit of double-sided tape on both the left and the right printed bed holders, and it should result in nice even walls along the Z-axis. So in order to complete this process, we recommend that you hit our website cultivate3d.com and you download two files. One of them is A0load .g code, the other one is A0calibrate.g code. Now we recommend that all of your SD cards have these two files loaded onto them initially before you load other G-code files. It means it will always be at the top of your list of prints that are available on the SD cards. Now both of these files will help with the calibration process, and I'll take you through how we use those a little bit later on. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is lower the bed to halfway. Now if you've got your SD card with A0 load and A0 calibrate on the SD card, you've got it inserted into the side of the LCD panel. Then you should have a print file dialog available to you. You simply select print file and then go down to A0 load, and we'll do that for you now. So the first thing that we need to do is to make sure that we're installing our printer, or that we're calibrating our printer on a dead flat surface. Use your spirit level and make sure that your surface is as flat as possible. If it's not 100% flat, you can always pack out the corners of your printer for the calibration process, and that will assist you throughout the rest of this tutorial. Okay, so now that you've got your bed dropped to about 1/3 the way with the A0load.g code file, turn off your printer. This will disable the Z or all of the stepper motors. Now apply, place your spirit level around about the front of the printer, between the two front Z motors, and level up the bed by manually rotating the couplings on the Z motors to adjust. And be as accurate as you possibly can with this. One thing that I'll point out at this stage is it's a good idea to move the motors very slowly, because the electrical feedback that's generated by moving one motor will cause the others to move, as they're all installed in parallel. So now that we've got that right, we're going to repeat this part of the process. Okay, so we're going to repeat this process. We're basically going to turn the spirit level around, and this time we're going to try and level up the rear Z motor, or the rear side of the bed, by rotating the coupling attached to the rear Z motor. So I'll just get that right. Again, go very slowly so as not to cause the other motors to move. Be as accurate as you possibly can. Now that I've done that, I'm just going to move my spirit level around the bed. And that's perfect. So now I know I have a very level bed, and a small adjustment to be made on this side, which we'll just fix now. Okay, so the next step is you need to level up the two Y axes, which are the maker slides on the left and the right top of the printer. Now, in order to do this, again, pretty simple. place your spirit level on the maker slide, and if need be, make adjustments to these 3 screws, or loosen these screws, and make adjustments up or down to bring your spirit level flat. Okay, so the next step is to level the rear x-axis, and this will give us a known starting point to be able to use as a reference for the front x-axis. So first of all, just turn off the printer to disable the stepper motors and allow us to move the carriages out of the way. Once the carriages are moved out of the way, place your spirit level in an empty section of the rear x-axis and loosen these 2 screws as shown to adjust the height of each end of the x-axis so that it is completely level. Once it is completely level, we then tighten the screws to secure its position, and we use that as a reference for the next step, which is to essentially make sure that both the x-axes are along the same plane, are moving on exactly the same Z plane. Okay, so the next part of this process is to level up the x-axes so that they are running parallel with the print bed, and in order to do that, again we use the spirit level. So your first part of the process, however, is you're going to need to loosen these 2 nuts right here, and to do that we of course use the long nose pliers on one side and just give it a few turns just to make it loose enough so that we can modify the height of this side of the x-axis. And once it's loose enough, you should notice that we have some movement there, but it shouldn't move too much. You don't want it too loose. You want it to basically stay where you leave it when you do move it. Okay, so what we're going to do is place our spirit level across a flat section of the 2 x-axes. You may need to move the carriages out of the way to facilitate this part of the process. So get down nice and low, make sure that the bubble is right in the middle, and just make the adjustments that are necessary in order to get your spirit level perfectly flush and to get these 2 x-axes in line with the bed. Now you may need to repeat this process a number of times, because as you tighten these screws you may push out these adjustments. Just tighten them evenly to prevent this from occurring, to prevent them from moving too much. So once you've done leveling up the right hand side of the 2 x-axes, you need to move the spirit level and repeat the process on the left hand side of the 2 x-axes. Okay, so now we have adjusted, or we've checked the level of the left and the right maker slide extrusions, the Y rail extrusions, and we've also checked that both the X extrusions are level with one another. We need to bring the bed up to the nozzles. So to bring the bed up to the nozzles, just on your controller, select Quick Settings, Home All. This will essentially bring everything back up to its 0 position. Now while the bed is bringing itself upwards, now is a good time just to lift all of the nozzles up, essentially. You don't want any of the nozzles interfering with any of the print bed or parts of the print bed when it homes. They need to be completely free, i.e. much higher than what the print bed is when it homes. And after, in the next part of this process, we'll bring those nozzles back down to the print bed. Okay, so just to explain what's going on here, we have two sides of the extruder bracket now, or sorry, the hot end bracket I should say. Now they move away from each other when, or away and closer to each other, when this screw is either turned counterclockwise or clockwise. So counterclockwise is down, clockwise is up. For the moment they should be wound all the way up. And in a moment we're going to drop them down to the print bed, and we're going to use a piece of A4 paper to check that the height of each is correct in the different positions of the printer. But before we do that, I want you to turn off your printer. This will enable you to move the axes around the print bed so that you can confirm that you've got a nice flat or even print bed, and that your print bed is perfectly calibrated to your X and Y axes. Okay, so you'll notice that the nozzle is not quite at the level of the print bed. Now, we don't want the nozzle to be touching the print bed. We want it to be roughly about 0.2 of a millimetre above the print bed to start off with. In fact, you might want to change this at the time of printing depending on what you're printing onto. But for the purpose of this exercise and getting everything square, we're going to use a piece of A4 paper. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to gently slide some A4 paper underneath the first nozzle. It doesn't matter which one you start with, and we're just going to lower the nozzle so that it's barely making contact with the paper. This is 80 GSM paper, so that's about right. If I go too far, you'll notice the paper grips. And too loose and the paper won't touch at all. And I think that's just about right. Now I'm going to repeat the process for all 4 nozzles. So now that you've adjusted the nozzle height to the print bed for all 4 nozzles, you're just going to need to move around your carriages and retest each of the nozzles, the height of each of the nozzles at each of the extents of the printer. And this will ensure that you've got a nice level print bed, levelled perfectly, of course, to your X and Y axes.